agenda documents. They are fully taken into account before decisions are made. Applications will be dealt in the order they appear on the agenda. I will invite applicants and agents, public speakers who have registered to speak at the appropriate times. All speakers must ensure that they do not overrun their 3-minute time limit. There will be no questioning by committee of objectors, supporters, applicants or agents who will not be able to speak again. All participants should mute their microphones and video feed when they are not speaking. Please remember to unmute your microphone and switch on your video feed when it is your turn to speak. Speak clearly and slowly into your microphone. To chat function on the Microsoft Teams should only be used by members of the meeting. Members of the public should not use this function in any capacity. This is being monitored and has full audit trail. Anyone found to be using this function will be removed from the meeting. If there are registered speakers on any application, the officers will present the report. Registered speakers will be invited to make representations one at a time. Members of the committee will be asked if they want to speak on the application. If there are no registered speakers on an application, the officers will be asked if they have anything further to add. Members of the committee will be asked if they want to speak on the application or if it is to be moved straight to a decision. The committee will then be invited to make a decision on each application. When a matter is put to a formal vote, I will ask each member of the committee individually to record their vote using the chat function. An example, for, against, or abstain. Finally, I ask everyone's patience with the use of technology. I apologise in advance if we experience any unforeseen difficulties, which we shall try to resolve expediently. When the item on which you have contributed is concluded, you may leave the meeting by using the red hang up button if you should so wish. Could I ask Democratic Services, are there any apologies for absence?
Haven't received any, Chair.
Thank you. To report appointment of any substitute members serving for this meeting of the committee.
None, Chair.
Yes, Chair. I should have said to you there, sorry, that Councillor Neil is putting in his apologies and the substitute is Councillor Sean Kesey.
Thank you. And to receive any declarations of interest under the Members' Code of Conduct? No? Okay, thank you. Plans and applications to develop. Planning application number P19-1660, private garage site at the rear of 16 to 24 Marlborough Gardens, Wordsley. Demolition of existing garages and erection of 4 numbered dwellings. It's pages 1 to 15 for members. I will hand it over to Carl Meller now, please, one of our planning officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, great. Thank you. Steve, can you upload the presentation, please? Thank you. If I try and take control of that, just bear with me a moment, please. Thank you. This application, as the Chair has indicated, P19-1660, is relating to a site off Marlborough Gardens, Wordsley, effectively the demolition of the existing garages and erection of 4 dwellings. I'll leave this photo up for now, and then I'll go through the other photos as we come to them. This application is one which has already been determined by the local planning authority under delegated powers following consultation with the chair of committee. Following that decision, a number of complaints have been received, and it's been suggested that the decision should be revoked. Whilst there is a legal mechanism for such an action to be taken, it is rarely used, and to do so would require special circumstances to justify it. In order to consider the appropriate course of action, the details of the application are being put before the committee tonight in order for you to reach a view on whether or not you would have been likely to approve the application or refuse it had the decision been placed before this committee. It's essential that you consider the application on its planning merits and you have no regard whatsoever for any other action the council may or may not wish to take. In order to ensure that your views are based on planning merits, it's decided to run this committee meeting the same way as we would do any other committee meeting and follow the regular planning application process. So as the chair's outlined, that includes public speaking and this presentation. Following your discussions, the chair will ask you to vote on whether your decision but that's whether you would have been for the proposal or against the proposal, or whether you would have abstained. With that said, I'll move to present the application. The site currently comprises 18 garages, and if I just move the presentation on, we have a view. I'll come back to these photographs later. We have a view of the sites, I believe. Well, we should have. It's not there. Give me a moment. Steve, there was a slide with the view of the existing site on it. Doesn't seem to be there. Give me a moment. Sorry, Chair, just give me a moment to find the overview if I can. Steve, I'll try and share my screen if that's possible. So I will. Okay. I don't know if everyone can see that on my screen. Hopefully you can. On the screen at the moment is an aerial photograph or an aerial view of the area in question. My cursor is covering the area, the extent of the application site, the access here off Marlborough Gardens, the garages here, 18 in total, on either side of the entrance, and the circulation and parking area around. This is Marlborough Gardens, this is Ascot Gardens. If I remove that from my screen and allow Steve to put the presentation back up. So, yeah. Just waiting for your approval, Steve, to allow me to access. Thank you. Sorry, members, about that. Hopefully you're able to see the aerial view of the site. So, as I've said, it comprises of 18 garages which have been there for some considerable period of time and been rented to local residents by the landowner. The site is surrounded by residential properties, although the only access to this site is via Marlborough Gardens, as I just showed. The original proposal was for the erection of 5 dwellings. However, following concerns raised by residents and the council's officers, the scheme was amended, reducing it to a total of 4. This comprises of 2 bedroom semi-detached dwellings and 2 3-bedroom detached dwellings. Each of the proposed dwellings will provide 2 off-street parking spaces for the occupiers. Local residents were consulted on the original scheme, that being for the 5 dwellings, and 26 objections were received from residents, along with an objection from a ward councillor. The second consultation, which took place on the amended scheme, resulted in 10 residents' objections. That scheme not only reduced the number of dwellings from 5 to 4, but also included the provision of a footpath into the site. Whilst the number of different reasons were given for the objections, which are detailed in paragraph 14 of the report, the main issue is clearly the impact of the loss of the site for parking for local residents. The council's highways engineer was consulted and raised no objection to the scheme, as it provides adequate parking to accommodate its own needs. Given that there are currently 18 garages on the site, there would be unlikely to be any increased traffic generated by the scheme. No objections were raised by other consultees. The relevant policies for this proposal are outlined in paragraphs 20 to 23 of the report. The key issues are also addressed in the report from paragraph 24 onwards. In summary, the principle of the development and the layout and design are considered to be acceptable. It is also considered that there will be no significant impact on the amenity of local residents. I will now, however, turn to the parking concerns. Can I start by drawing your attention to the pre-committee notes provided, and specifically the representation made by the leader, and also the statement submitted on behalf of residents of Marlborough Gardens and Ascot Gardens. You will note the contents of the letter and the council's response to each point is provided in the boxes following each point, just to make it clear. There are two separate issues relating to parking. Both of these could be considered to be material planning issues. The first is in relation to the parking and traffic impact of the development itself. So as just suggested, the comments of the highways engineer relate to this point specifically, as it is imperative that any new development provides sufficient parking for the use of the residents of those proposed dwellings. The proposed parking does meet the council standards for these dwellings. Consideration would also be given to the impact of the development on the traffic levels of the area. And as said, as there were currently 18 garages on the land and only 4 dwellings are proposed, you consider there would actually be a reduction in traffic levels as a result of the proposed developments. The second separate issue in relation to parking is the impact which the scheme would have on the parking in the locality. Whilst this is a material planning consideration, it must be seen in context. It is undeniable that there will be an additional pressure on local residents' parking. This is due to the lack of off-street parking which currently exists on the estate in comparison to the need. Whilst residents have been able to use the land in question for parking, it's always been done via the renting of garages and/or parking spaces from a private owner. There is no evidence of any legal or planning requirement for this land to be provided for the parking for local residents. The proposal to develop the land for housing in itself does not cause parking issues. These parking issues already exist and have done for some time. They will be exacerbated by the loss of the site for parking, but the landowner has made it clear they intend to cease renting the land for parking in any event. As such, the proposal does not cause additional parking problems and could not reasonably be refused for that reason. As indicated in paragraphs 46 through to 49 in the report, the local planning authority has no legal right to prevent the cessation of the land for the parking use and cannot require the landowner to mitigate against that loss or refuse a proposal to develop the land following the loss of that parking. I'll just take you through the photographs if I can. So this is a view of the entrance to Marlborough Garden from Westminster Road. The site is in the distance, so we'll come to that in a moment. This is the entrance to that site. So further down Marlborough Gardens, as you can see, it's at a lower level than Marlborough Gardens itself. These are the properties 16 to 21 to the west, to the left of that entrance as you look at it. And these are the properties on the entrance to the right. This is a view back up the entrance from where the proposed site actually is, back towards Marlborough Gardens, and a view turning around to look at the garages on the right as you enter. This is a view at the end of the garage site where the property number 15 Marlborough Gardens has vehicles via access from this site. And this is a view of the garages of Marlborough Gardens in the background, and a view across the wider site. A view back, the entrance is to the right here. So view of these are the properties in Ascot Gardens. And again, similar position. And a view across the site off 22 Marlborough Gardens. This is back across the site with the entrance, which is to the left. And again, a similar view to the one you had before. This is a video, and I apologise for it not being as consistent as it should be, but it's a video of the site being walked to give you a better context. Hopefully it's working for everybody. Thank you. Given the information in the report and the presentation given, and obviously subject to conversations amongst members, it's the professional advice of officers that members ought to endorse the decision that was made to approve the application for the reasons outlined in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Chair, it's on mute. You're on mute.
Paul, you're on mute. Nobody can hear you.
Chair, could you unmute your microphone?
Chair.
Steve, have you got us all on mute? Do you need to unmute us?
No, the chair should be able to unmute his microphone using his bar with the one with the microphone. Should be able to press that and the line should go.
Chair, can I suggest you maybe try and log out and then log back in again and see if that solves the problem? And we'll just hold fire on the meeting to allow you to do that.
Chair, could you possibly come out of the meeting and come back in again using the link? That might solve the problem. Yeah. Okay.
Technology's great when it works, isn't it?
Yeah. We haven't got any speakers on this. This is just for us councillors. Am I right in that, thinking that?
No, we
No.
do have speakers.
We have speakers at this point. Okay. Okay.
And I believe there's public watching as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try. Yeah. And you can't unmute.
Hello?
Hello?
Yay.
Hey.
Hello. I'm really sorry. My microphone would not work. It would not work. Right. Sorry about that, everyone. Technology, eh? Right. Onwards and upwards. Can I invite our first speaker to speak, please? David Blood.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the residents, and let me advise committee that the garage site is not at this time redundant, nor a brownfield site, as planners have been led you to believe and stated in the reports. Sadly, we are told in the reports issued today that the applicants would cease all parking regardless of the redevelopment proposals in any event, and are prepared to block off the site should they not get their way. Several residents and many traders are at this time paying for parking and storage as well as permits to park. I am aware that you have been making the decision as to whether you would have agreed with the Chair's delegated decision. Residents believe you would have rejected the application, and indeed the Chair would also had the full details and objections of the application been laid before her. I have been advised that it was incorrect for me to provide you on Saturday last with a resident summary of objections to the proposals, and furthermore residents have offered a solution to the problems the council now finds itself. The leader of the council, and indeed the acting deputy chief executive, agreed to my submission being forwarded to you by the business operation team leader within the planning and regeneration department within council on Friday last, i.e. the last working day before this meeting was scheduled. It didn't occur, hence my submission on Saturday last. Council subsequently submitted the report this very morning on the day of the meeting. All the details contained within the residents' report, including photographs that were taken in the evenings and weekends, would have been presented at a regular development control meeting. However, it would seem officers are reluctant for you all to know these objections. As the leader of the council has stated, the decision was a complete disaster. Residents have made a simple remark. Why is it policymakers and planners never have to live and work in the environments for which they create? The council employed the services of QC to look into the delegated decision made and as to whether it could be rescinded. He advised, so I am told, by two senior people within council that it could. You have been provided with photos which indicate the serious nature of the roads in and around the area, and there is only one decision elected members that you can make, and that is, unfortunately, Chair, we would not have supported the decision you made with the detailed evidence before you this evening, and not necessarily provided to you fully at the delegated decision stage. In regard to possible solutions to the dilemma the council has found itself, these have been detailed and discussed with the acting deputy chief executive, and I am advised that it would involve minimum cost and take only a few days to carry out. Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry that I will not be allowed to ask or answer any of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Blood. Yeah. Could I call on our second speaker, please? Mrs. Donna Hipkiss.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Yeah, you're on.
Thank you. I'd like to address the objections by setting out the actual circumstances of the site and what will happen as a result of this planning decision. Firstly, it's important to note that this is private land, no public rights of passage, and there's no obligation to provide parking. Secondly, demand for the parking and storage has become unviable. Thirdly, I'd like to highlight the benefits to the neighbours adjoining the land if the development proceeds. The land consists of 18 garages with open space. The garages are let on monthly licence agreements with 4 that are used for parking, and the other 14 garages are used for storage. 10 out of the 18 garages are not used by local residents. There are 5 parking permits in place. Any vehicle that is parked without a permit is parked illegally. Prior to having the parking permit system in place, the land was abused with many vehicles parking without permission. The permit system was introduced in May 2016 for a very fair price of £30 per day per permit, but only 7 local residents took up the offer. Since then, the maximum number of permits that we've had in place is 10. Since increasing the charge to 50 pence per day in April 2017, demand has reduced. From June 2018, there have only been 5 parking permits in place. So along with the 4 garages used for parking, there are only 9 residents currently using the land for parking. In addition, number 15 Marlborough Gardens and number 12 Ascot Gardens have vehicle access licence agreements in place, giving them permission to drive over the private land for which they pay a nominal charge of £50 per year. These agreements expire on the 16th of August 2020 and can be terminated at any time without notice. So you can see that demand for parking on the site is actually low, and the income just isn't viable against the cost of administration, repairs and maintenance. In summary, this is private land that is currently providing parking for 9 vehicles, storage for 14 people, with 10 out of the 18 garages are not local residents, and vehicle access for 2 vehicles. Whatever happens today, planning or not, the parking and storage will be closed as it's no longer viable, and we will seek an alternative commercial use for the land, which may result in higher volume of traffic. If planning permission is granted for the 4 dwellings to be built, the private right of way by foot will be unaffected. The traffic would reduce from 25 vehicles down to a maximum of 8. The neighbouring properties would benefit from less nuisance, less fly tipping, reduced risk of antisocial behaviour and increased security. Finally, the proposed development of 4 houses will have a positive effect on the surrounding houses, making the area more pleasant and desirable. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Ipkiss. Right. Well, on this occasion, I'm going to open the debate up to committee. So, yes.
Excuse me, Chair, to jump in. I'm not sure how the protocol at this stage. I just would like to come back on a couple of points of clarity, if you allow me.
Of course, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few of the points. These are not opinions, but just points of fact. This is a brownfield site. Brownfield site is land that's previously been developed, and it has previously been developed for garages. So that's a point of clarity. In terms of the pre-committee notes, as you'll be aware, pre-committee notes are notes of additional information that's been provided or is relevant from the closure of the committee agenda a number of weeks ago. It's quite normal and common for those pre-committee notes to be provided to members on the day of committee, in fact, just before committee, because that's the nature of what they are. We endeavoured to do these earlier, but we're unable to. There's no hiding of the facts here in any way. In fact, the information and any public objection has been available on the web throughout the entire period. And as early as the 15th of May. The final point I'd just like to clarify is relation to the revocation. As I said at the start of the meeting, members are asked to disregard any consideration of revocation, but I think it's important because the statement's been made. The legal advice we have sought did not say we should revoke this decision, only that we could from a legal point of view, which is what I clarified at the start of the meeting. There is a mechanism which allows a planning decision to be revoked. Whether it's appropriate to do so is a matter for the council, and this process today is one part of that decision-making process. I just hope that's useful, but I just want to repeat for you, Chair, and the members that it's imperative that the revocation of this application is not form part of the discussions or considerations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Carl. Right, open up to committee. Would anyone like to speak? Councillor Taylor.
Right, yes, I've got 3 points to make. The first one being that, can you all hear me? Yes?
Yes, that's fine.
Yes, yeah, okay.
Yes.
First point I'd like to make is that this council is committed to using brownfield sites before greenfield. Can I clarify that? Yes?
Yes.
And this is a brownfield site, okay? The second point I'd like to make is that this is private land. The private owners of this land are not responsible for the adjoining parking issues in the adjoining streets. That's right? Am I right on that? The third point I'd like to make is that is the access down onto this site wide enough for the utilities to get down there? Those are my 3 points. Has everybody heard them?
Yes.
Okay, so could somebody from Carl, could you address those?
Through you, Chair, if that's okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, Councillor Taylor. Yes, brownfield land is thought to be and considered to be appropriate use for future residential use, and actually preferable, as you said, to greenfield or greenbelt land in the first instance. That's correct. Also, in terms of the parking, yes, you're correct. There's no legal obligation for the landowner to provide parking for any of the residents in this area because there's no legal link to this site. And that's the point really that we're making in terms of the fact that, yes, it's a material consideration, but it would be unreasonable for us to require them to provide parking for residents, bearing in mind that's not legally required and hasn't been traditionally. The third point on the access, yeah, I understand it is suitable to get the vehicles down there it needs to. In terms of refuse, those bins would be collected at the top of the entranceways within 10 metres of the highway, which is the normal practice, I think, for most situations. So the refuse vehicles wouldn't have to go down to the end of the access to gain to be able to change the refuse. Do you want to come back in, Councillor Taylor? Sorry. I
do indeed on that point. If the refuse is to be collected at the top of this this way into this site, is it going to impede on the neighbours at the top there? Is it going to impede on their properties or at any point?
I'm sorry, Councillor, I didn't hear all that. I think you asked whether or not the placing of the bins would impact on the existing residents. Is that correct? It appears to me the bins could be placed on the footpath that's been provided on the amended drawing without impinging on any of the existing residence areas. Thank you.
That's fine.
Right, but anyone else from the committee would like to talk? I'd like to
Paul.
I'd like to ask
Councillor Hanif, I'd like to say something.
Oh, right. Yeah, carry on, Councillor Hanif.
Okay, can everybody hear me all right? Yeah, just yes. I have 3 points as well. Just listen to the two speakers. Well, one speaker mentioned about the 10 garages being empty. Just like to know how long these garages have been empty. Okay, point number one. Point number two, do we have enough access, entry, exit for emergency vehicles like your fire engines, ambulances, and so on? Has that been addressed? And thirdly, it is a brownfield site, so which is not fully used really. So if you just want to, Carl, want to address these 3 points? Hello? Can you hear me?
Sorry, we've got a couple of technical issues at the moment. Can you just bear with us 2 seconds?
No problem.
Right. Councillor Cole, can I just ask, did you put your hand up to talk after?
Yes, Chair, I did.
Okay, you're next.
Thank you.
Chair, can I just say, if there's any possible way of getting these meetings back in a face-to-face situation, even if it's utilising the town hall, I think it would be of benefit to everyone.
I agree. I mean, to be honest, last week at the chair's brief, we were talking about what could be done to have it in the back in the chambers, to be honest, because with social distancing and with all the guidelines that we would need to do, because this is clearly it's not working very well. Do we have Carl back?
I have to answer that one now. Some of it's still isolated.
I know. I remember your comment. Yeah, what I was thinking was at the time was if there's anything we can do for the ones that are isolating to meet us virtually, But for most of the members, I'm sure that I believe most of us could make it, and I'm sure most of the planning officers. Do we have Cole back yet?
Yeah, I apologise, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't know what happened there when Councillor Taylor was speaking the second time. Yes, sorry, I didn't. I don't know if you can repeat the questions. I think I understood that one was about the length of time the garages have been empty. Is that correct?
Yes, Carl.
I don't know the exact time when the garages became less well used. I think Mrs. Hipkiss just said there was a change in the price last year, was it? And or was it earlier than that? And the reduction had gone down. I can't tell you the exact answer to that, but obviously it was clarified or mentioned in the speech. Emergency. Sorry, let me just go on to brownfield. What was the question on brownfield, please? If you could repeat it.
It's yeah. I mean, I was just sort of more understanding whether it was a brownfield site, which it is. It's been clarified earlier, and it's not really fully used, the whole area. So it's just a point, really, actually, Carl. I think you answered it earlier, so we're okay on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Third point was very much emergency vehicles, access in and out, and so on.
Yes, Councillor Honey, the access doesn't effectively change. So, the current existing arrangements for access to get down to a fire at the back of that site would still be the same as it is now. That we're not making any changes to the entrance to the access way. It's as per existing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Carl. Can I ask Councillor Cowell to come in, please? Councillor Cole, are you there?
I think that's it.
That's it.
Sorry about that. Just going back briefly to the emergency access, I think there's a comment somewhere, it might have been from Highways or from somebody, I'm sure I read it, about the fire service and whether they'd been consulted and whether you would actually be able to get something like a fire truck down there. And also looking at the actual plans, I noticed for plots 2 and 3, the car parking, the sort of parking arrangement is where they park behind one another. In effect, it looks like there's 2 strips of 2. And looking at the whole thing, if all of those cars were in situ, the 2 per property, if somebody was to say to visit, or worse, if it was a fire engine or something like that, would they actually be able to manoeuvre without using the drives to turn around? Because that looks to me like a bit of a dead end. I accept that the parking issues are a little bit of a red herring because they're nothing really to do with this committee. But can we get vehicles in and out if all of the allocated parking spaces were actually occupied? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. We haven't consulted the fire service specifically on this because that particular issue is covered by building regulations, and so therefore they would need to get the necessary approvals at the appropriate time for at that stage. In terms of the parking, yes, the layout does involve some tandem parking. It's considered to be suitable and able for people to manoeuvre and enter and leave the site in forward gear if they need to do so. Obviously, I can't comment on the number of visitors anyone might have, but it'd be for them to arrange their parking if they have visitors, as anybody else would have to do. But yes, at the moment, there's sufficient space to manoeuvre within that site to make sure you leave via that entrance in a forward gear. Thank you.
Can I just come back on that, Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. If all of those spaces were to be occupied, are we actually saying that you could still manoeuvre in such a way that you could get the vehicles out? It just seems to me a slight overdevelopment, and as though that park would be literally rammed to the limit.
Yeah, the highways view is that. Sorry, Chair, there's a 10-metre turning head which will allow adequate manoeuvrability in that site to exit, even if the spaces are used. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Councillor Kesey?
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Lovely. Right. Just a cursory glance at Google Street Maps demonstrates how congested this small cul-de-sac is. And it's my opinion that even the displacement of 4 cars is going to make a massive difference to accessibility and manoeuvrability. I need to know that highways and other planning officers are absolutely confident that this development and displacement will not have a detrimental effect on the lives of the residents already living in this street. Can you confirm that for me, please, and justify it?
If I can, Chair, yes, in terms of the parking, as we laid out before, the parking that will be displaced will have to be parked elsewhere further from their homes. Clearly, if there's no space to park at the top of Marlborough Gardens, then nobody will park at the top of Marlborough Gardens. So they would have to park further away. We do not deny there'll be an increased number of parking issues for the surrounding streets. That's just unfortunately the situation due to the history of this estate and the lack of parking. This proposal, as I said before, does not in itself cause that problem. The lack of parking would cause that problem. And if this site was used for any other purpose than parking, which is the right of the landowner to do so, this same problem would occur. It would therefore not be a planning issue, but more of an issue of parking for residents that haven't got enough parking at the present time. So we're not arguing the point that there will be increased pressure on the streets in terms of parking availability, but there will not be in terms of traffic. And there should not be any different situation in terms of manoeuvring in the site because the same access exists as it does now. And we're not proposing to change that, or the developer's not proposing to change that, I should say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kesey. Yeah. Does anybody else wish to speak on this?
Can I come back in on that to clarify something that was said earlier?
You can.
Right. It was said earlier by the lady, I think, who may be one of the owners of the site, that there are only 9 of the residents that actually legally use that site. So if 9 of those, we're talking 9 residents there, we're putting on 8 homes with 16 spaces. Those nine cars or 9 residents are going to have to find somewhere else either way. Am I right in saying that? And all those garages that were in use by people who don't live in the area would no longer have reason to be visiting that area. I'm just clarifying that. Is that right?
Through you, Chair, for clarification. Yeah. Just to confirm, there are proposed to be 4 dwellings which would have 8 spaces total. That's 2 per dwelling. So yes, the other cars that are parked there, I think the owner said there's 4 with permits at the present time, and there's a number of units used for storage. They would have to find other parking options, certainly. In terms of any other parking that's taken place on there illegally, it's hard for me to say because obviously that I can't account for that number. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Cowell.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming back on this issue of manoeuvrability, if all of the parking spaces were occupied and we had some visitors appear, it doesn't seem to me, looking at the plans, that really there'd be anywhere for them to go. Not even. I'd still question whether there's room to actually be able to turn around. Whether this is just too overdeveloped. I mean, if the one end had been developed as opposed to both, it looks to me like it might work, but I'm not sure. If I was to drive down there, for instance, and my friends had just moved in and I suddenly found that there was nowhere to park, it's not even like you can pull up down the road. You really have, it almost looks like you've got to reverse back around the streets. Can we just have some confirmation one way or the other on that, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Carl, is there anything you'd like to?
You just give me one moment, please, Chair. I'll come back if I can. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair, can I just confirm, while there's a short recess, we're voting here to rescind a previously granted planning permission, are we? And the process will be it goes to council, or what's the process?
Sorry, Chair. I missed that moment. I'm just coming back on the earlier point. The highways engineer is confident there's room for a visitor who comes into that area and recognises there's not enough parking to turn around and exit there and find alternative parking space. I believe in front of number 4. I haven't got the plan in front of me because I've got the screen up here. And I don't know if there's a subsequent question I missed. I apologise.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. I'll get to that one in a little while, Councillor Kesey. Councillor Carl, did Carl answer your question, or was there another question in there?
No, I didn't place a follow-up question. I think it was Councillor Kesey that came in. It wasn't myself, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, well, I've got a question myself, if that's okay, Carl.
Yeah.
Regarding the public rights of way, was there any comments from police or from?
Can I just check that one moment, Chair? Just something. Sorry, Chair, just clarifying that I was correct in what I was going to say, just to make sure. Yeah, we didn't consult the police specifically because it doesn't meet the threshold for the of development which we would normally do so. What the police would comment on is whether or not that development is safe and secure by design. So things like overlooking, whether it increases potential for crime, etc., etc. That's been assessed by officers, and we do that regularly. So they wouldn't specifically comment on the rights of way as such.
Right. Okay. Because I think I've got a few reservations myself, to be honest. I think the term brownfield site is like a loosely termed sort of term at the moment, because a brownfield site is in itself would be a non-used derelict site, and this isn't derelict. From what I understand, it's actually been a parking facility for these houses since the 60s. For myself, the houses were built in the 60s, and the developer at the time decided, look, hey, we need to have some parking for these people because they haven't got any driveways. And I just find that at the moment, I've got the same reservations as Councillor Cole with the highway safety. I mean, we have existing highway safety problems, which we can't look at, but I am looking at highway safety measures that could be there in the future should we go ahead with this application. So for myself, I'd like to just ask if there's any other speakers who would like to ask a question, please.
Just one point. I have to reiterate, this site is not owned by the adjoining properties, and the use of it was by agreements. It is not a council-owned site; it's a privately owned site, and if it's rescinded, the owners, if they don't get this planning permission, they're going to close this site down either way. Is that what they're saying? It will now be in use for the residents.
Yes, through you, Chair. That's the position of the landowner. Will either just cease using the parking because it's no longer viable and seek an alternative form of development if it's not this one. So development will ensue regardless. If I could also take the opportunity, if it's okay with you, Chair, just to confirm the brownfield position. You're correct in terms of the fact that brownfield is previously developed land. It just doesn't have to be vacant, but if it's previously developed, and it tends to be industrial, commercial type uses that this applies to, then it is brownfield land. It is considered to be as such. So I think that any land which is occupied by a permanent structure, and we cover that in the pre-committee notes, but it's just a point of clarity, not to disagree on anything that you said, obviously.
No, of course, no, that's fine. There's no problem. Disagree with me, that's okay. what debate's all about. It's just that I've got reservations in the fact that there are some highway safety issues coming up, and I also think the overdevelopment, as Councillor Cole stated, is something that we should be taking into mind. Are there any more questions? I am conscious of the time, so are there any more questions from committee before I go to the vote?
Can you clarify what the vote is? Is it a vote to uphold? Is that right?
I will clarify the vote as soon as we go into the vote. All right. Well, I will take that as there are no more questions, so I will go into the vote. We will now proceed to the vote. Members need to be clear they are not voting on the planning decision on this application, as this has already been made. Members are being asked to vote if they would have been supportive or not of the development on its planning merits should it have come before Development Control Committee. Members are not determining the application this evening, nor are they considering the merits of revocation. Please vote to support or reject the development. Now, when I gave the announcement earlier, it does state that we will be doing it from the chat. Can I just confirm that everyone has the chat? Right, so I'd first like to ask Councillor Harmeg, are you with us?
Yes.
No, Chair. Councillor Ahmed's not with us.
Right, okay. So if everyone has the chat, I'm sorry, Steve, I lost. If everyone's got the chat, could you please vote in the chat for the approval of the actual? So I'm losing it. Could you please vote for or against this application?
Yeah. Yeah.
As my vote, can you clarify that my vote?
Chair, shall I come in?
Yes.
Sorry, Chair. It appears to be 4 votes to 3 against the proposal on the site. In the spirit of continuing the conversation in line as we would do at committee, it would just be beneficial if members could clarify the reasons for refusal as they would do for a formal refusal, please, Chair. Thanks.
That doesn't add up to what I can see on my screen. Sorry, the 4 against and the 3 for doesn't add up to what's on my screen.
Through you, Chair, we have for the proposal, Councillors Burston, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Hanif. Against the proposal, Councillor Bradley, Councillor Cowell, Councillor Harley, and Councillor Kesey. Unless I'm incorrect, but I think that's what the situation is. Thanks.
Yes, that's what I'm looking at as well. Councillor Cowell, did you want to come in?
Yes, Chair. I was just in relation to what Carl said, obviously about reasons for refusal. I think it's what myself and yourself actually raised earlier. Really, to me, it just seems. I think it's overdevelopment and highway safety concerns that I would argue. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Cole. Yeah, that's what we were sort of indicating earlier, and I still stand by that. So if that's all right, Carl, it will be highway safety and overdevelopment.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you. As to the process now, as you know, I'm no legal buff. Gail, is there anything you could add to what happens next in the process?
It doesn't need to worry about that, does it? It doesn't matter before. It's a matter.
Right. Okay. So we can move on. Right. So that's my part of the virtual meeting over. So I will rescind my position and give the position to the chair. Thank you, Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. So moving on. Welcome to the virtual meeting. This is a formal council committee. The public proceedings will take place live on the internet and the meeting will be recorded. It will assist the conduct of business if participants speak only when invited. I shall adjourn the meeting if necessary if protocol is not observed. Members of the public are welcome to view the proceedings but should not make contributions during this decision-making process. All members of the committee have received the reports in advance and had the opportunity to read them. The reports are published on the internet. Additional documents, known as the pre-committee notes, are available on the Council's internet site and have been emailed to members and public speakers. These should be read in conjunction with the main agenda documents. They are fully taken into account before decisions are made. Applications will be dealt with in the order they appear on the agenda. I will invite applicants, agents and public speakers who have registered to speak at the appropriate times. All speakers must ensure that they do not overrun their 3-minute time limit. There will be no questioning by the committee or objectors, supporters, applicants or agents who will not be able to speak again. All participants should mute their microphones and video feed when they are not speaking. Please remember to unmute your microphone and switch on your video feed when it is your turn to speak. Speak clearly and slowly into your microphone. The chat function on Microsoft Teams should only be used by the members of the committee and officers. This is to assist me with the conduct of the meeting. Members of the public should not use this function in any capacity. This is being monitored and has a full audit trail. Anyone found to be using this function will be removed from the meeting. If there are registered speakers on an application, the officers will present the report. Registered speakers will be invited to make representations one at a time. Members of the committee will then be asked if they want to speak on the application. If there are no registered speakers on an application, the officers will be asked if they have anything further to add. Members of the committee will be asked if they want to speak on the application or if it is to be moved straight to a decision. The committee will then be invited to make a decision on each individual application. When a matter is then put to a formal vote, I will ask each member of the committee individually to record their vote using the chat function. So for, against, or abstain. Finally, I ask for everyone's patience with the use of the technology. I apologise in advance if we experience any unforeseen difficulties, which we shall try to resolve quickly. When the item on which you have contributed is concluded, you may leave the meeting by using the red hang up button if you wish. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Councillor Chris Neal.
And an appointment of any substitute members serving for this meeting?
Councillor Sean Keesey.
Thank you. And are there any declarations of interest under the Members' Code of Conduct? No. And can I confirm and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of February 2020 as a correct record? Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the first application, which is planning application number P191352, pages 1 to 22. Does any of the officers have any more to put to this application?
Thank you, Chair. We have prepared a presentation, which I believe Steve Griffiths will be putting up shortly for us to go through with you.
Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. The application before you relates to 111, 112 High Street, Stourbridge. Oh, we've got the wrong application. Hang on, sorry, 2 seconds.
That's the right one, isn't it?
We've got the wrong committee presentation here. So we're just trying to go through it. Here you go. Sorry, sorry about that. The application relates to 111 to 112 High Street, Stourbridge.
Emily, can I just stop you there, please? I thought we were going straight in order of the applications.
Bear with me. Let me just check. Let me just check the agenda for you.
I think we usually do the public speaking ones first.
Yeah, I'm aware of that one, but it's as written in the chair's announcement. It says that this time it will be as they appear on the agenda.
Can you tell them that? Because I can't get back on. Emily can tell them that.
So we're doing it speakers first.
Yeah. Emily, are you back on?
Can hear you, Steve.
You can hear me. Sorry, yeah, I think we all do them normally in the for the public speakers. So if we could do the.
So we're going back to the way we normally do it.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Chair.
All right.
If it's okay, Steve, I'll share my screen because we've got the presentation that's in the correct order here. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Should be able to. Can you see that? So the application before you is 111 112 High Street, Stourbridge. It seeks permission for the conversion of part of the former retail unit to residential. The application comprises 9 units, with 8 units sited towards the rear, ground floor and first floor of the building, and 1 further unit sited at the front of the property addressing High Street. This would be sited at first floor. The officer recommendation is to approve planning permission subject to conditions. For the purpose of minutes, since the pre-committee notes were published, 1 further objection has been received to the application. No further material planning matters have been raised in this objection that have not already been outlined in paragraph 12 of the officer's report. The application site sits on Stourbridge High Street. Directly adjoining the building to the northwest of the site is HSBC. To the southeast of the site is the Cock and Bull Public House, and beyond this the Claptrap, which is a bar and event venue situated on the first floor above the ground floor cafe uses. The wider area is comprised of a mixture of banks, retail, cafes, restaurants and bars. The ground floor of the application site has recently received planning permission for a cafe restaurant. To the rear of the site, the application site addresses the rear of Stourbridge Police Station, which is currently undergoing conversion to residential units. Notably, a number of objections have been received in respect of the adjacent land uses and potential noise and disturbance on future occupiers that could have a detrimental impact upon the existing businesses adjacent to the site. The application has been considered by the Council's Environmental Safety and Health Team, and an acoustic noise report has been submitted to support the application. Amendments were subsequently made to the application to remove all residential units sited on the flank elevation of the building towards the Cock and Bull and Claptrap, to ensure that there are no openings to habitable rooms along the eastern boundary. At the front of the site at first floor, there is 1 unit of residential accommodation proposed at the front of the building, which does have openings to habitable rooms facing onto Stourbridge High Street. The first floor dwelling itself would be set back from the ground floor front elevation addressing the High Street by approximately 5 metres, with a small roof terrace to be situated above the outdoor area for the commercial premises on the ground floor below. A condition has been included to secure the provision of an acoustic barrier to protect future occupiers of this dwelling from adverse noise impacts. Parking at the rear of the site would provide 22 spaces, and the applicants have indicated that these would be provided as public pay and display, with a season ticket scheme available for future occupiers. Given the highly sustainable location in Stourbridge Town Centre, the provision of unallocated parking is considered acceptable. However, a condition requiring details of the car park management and including how the season tickets will be managed has been included as part of the officer recommendation. In terms of the appropriateness of this location for residential development, further to the consideration of the impact of residential uses on the existing commercial uses, the Stourbridge Area Action Plan supports the reuse of upper floors of premises within the town centre for residential uses, alongside Policy L10 of the Dudley Borough Development Strategy, which also supports the reuse of upper floors. The National Planning Policy Framework also recognises the important role that residential development can have in ensuring the vitality of town centres on appropriate sites. The building is currently vacant and offers little in terms of visual amenity to the street scene, both in terms of the High Street and Victoria Street, where the predominant residential frontage would be sited. The local planning authority is satisfied, following extensive evidence produced during the course of the application, that the siting of the residential dwellings accords with policy, both in terms of with the location of the residential dwellings in a town centre location and that their siting will not lead to a conflict with existing commercial activities in this town centre location. So this picture before you just shows the front of the site addressing Stourbridge High Street, and we can just see to the left-hand side, the corner of Cock and Bull. There is an outdoor bar seating area down the alleyway that you can see separating 111, 112 High Street and the Cock and Bull Public House. This picture just shows that relationship in a bit more detail, and we can also see further along the High Street with the HSB Bank to the other side. This shows you the existing rear elevation where the majority of the residential units would be sited. Residential units would be dual aspect on the ground floor with gardens sited along addressing the car park, and habitable units at the top on the first floor would have views directed towards the car park area. We can also just see here the relationship between the proposed residential windows which would be inserted into that rear elevation, and just on the right hand side of that picture the police station, which is currently being converted into residential dwellings following planning permission being approved. You can see here this is looking towards Victoria Street, and you can also see Stourbridge Police Station in the background. This is an access into the rear area servicing retail units addressing High Street. Again, here you can see the rear portion of the application site. This shows you the existing wall. There would be habitable units behind that wall. As I have said before, they would be dual aspect, looking predominantly towards the car park, and they would all have their own private winter gardens to ensure that they have adequate amenity space at ground floor. The officer recommendation is to approve the development subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Emily. Can I call on our first speaker on this application, Kat Eccles, please?
Hi.
Thank you.
Do I have a timer to speak?
One of the officers will come in just when it comes to the 3-minute mark.
Okay.
Thank you.
So my name's Kat Eccles. I'm speaking on behalf of the community. As you said, this application attracted a very large number of objections, mainly from patrons of Claptrap, the venue, of which I am one. And we're all extremely concerned of the possible impact of residential properties in close proximity to Claptrap and also Cock and Bull and various other nighttime venues on the high streets. This application would act against the MPPF in several significant areas. The noise survey at no point refers to Claptrap as a live music venue, merely a nightclub. This fails to acknowledge the fundamental differences between frequencies and the challenges of limiting levels. The noise is very different between pre-recorded music in a nightclub and that generated by live music. The two recording locations which were used for the noise survey, location 1 was on the front of the building on the High Street elevation, and location 2 on the southwest corner of the building, furthest from Claptrap and the Cock and Bull. Location 1 was only used once on a Wednesday in December 2018, and further surveys in May last year, which was done over a weekend, used only location 2 for those readings. And no mitigation was made for the glass tipping along the eastern elevation, which takes place between about 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning over the weekends. Yeah, I deemed this noise survey completely unfit for purpose. And also, the report states that the living areas have been removed from the eastern wall, but actually they're still there on the plans. With new windows and also a balcony facing out onto the high street. So to comply with National Planning Policy Framework, the developer would need to carry out a noise impact study, which acknowledges the existence of a grassroots music venue. And in view of agent of change, the developer should perhaps bring forward a best practice deed of easement, limiting the ability of future residents to complain about existing noise levels. We've lost many independent music venues nationally. They've had to close their doors due to complaints from residents of new properties. Locally, we lost the popular Rainbow venue in Digbeth. And Stourbridge has a long creative history, including music, and we need to preserve and promote our creative communities. And Claptrap is really a shining beacon in the desert of live music. Furthermore, I think Stourbridge town centre is completely oversaturated at the moment with flats and apartments, with the conversion of the police station and also the former Stourbridge News building. While I am in favour of mixed-use high streets, I don't believe there's any benefit placing homes next to the busiest nighttime area of our town. So, yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I now call on Laura Wilkinson to speak, please?
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's great, thank you.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Good evening, Chair, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you regarding these proposals. Your officers have prepared a very comprehensive report which sets out all the pertinent issues associated with these proposals, and I therefore only have a few comments to make. Firstly, it is important to note that there are no objections to the proposed development from the Environmental Health Officer in respect of noise or other disturbances. The applicant and their consultants have worked closely with the council officers over the last few months to ensure that the noise assessments have fully assessed the noise from the surrounding existing commercial activities, including assessing the noise from the Claptrap music venue and the new A3 use granted planning permission last year on part of the ground floor. The design and layout of the scheme was amended from 14 units down to 9, with no windows now proposed along the eastern elevation, which is the elevation closest to the Claptrap music venue and neighbouring public house. A number of mitigation measures have also been incorporated into the design of the proposed development, including acoustic barriers around the amenity spaces, upgraded glazing, and the provision of mechanical ventilation. These have been conditioned, all of which are agreeable to the applicant. These design amendments and mitigation measures will ensure that future occupiers of the dwellings are protected, as well as protecting the existing surrounding commercial activities from future restrictions as a result of the proposed development. Secondly, there are no objections from the highways engineers in regards to parking, access or refuse collection. Thirdly, the proposals would provide residential units in a sustainable town centre location, making use of floor space which has been vacant for 3.5 years. Residential development in town centre locations is recognised by the NPPF to play a key role in the vitality of town centres, and the development will go towards assisting with the regeneration of this part of the town centre. Fourthly, the proposals would involve modernising the visual appearance of the existing building, introducing render and some timber cladding to the elevations and some new windows to serve the residential units, which would be appropriately positioned and sited in respect to the existing openings and the general warehouse appearance of the building. And finally, we have also seen that some of the objectors have raised concerns that no affordable housing will be provided. However, as the proposed development only involves 9 units, the requirement for affordable housing is not triggered. Therefore, in view of the above, I would respectfully request that you endorse your officer's recommendation and grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you. Would Emily like to come back on any of those 3 minutes?
Thank you, Chair. No, I've got nothing to add.
Thank you. Okay then, so I'll open it up to the committee. Does anybody have any questions or remarks to make? Councillor Cowell?
Thanks, Chair. One of the solutions to the noise appears to be this concept of having a void towards the east, so that there's no openings on the east side. Can I ask who will be responsible for managing that void space, and bearing in mind the comments from the police about the risk of crime and burglary? Will providing a void space at such a location not actually encourage criminal activity and potentially put people at risk? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowell. Emily, do you want to come back in on that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The void referred to is contained within the building, so it would be the building owners to manage that. So given that it's contained within the building, we wouldn't have any concerns that that would give rise to antisocial behaviour in the same way that perhaps a void of external land, if unmanaged, would potentially give rise to.
Thank you, Emily. Are you happy with that, Councillor Cowell?
Can I just come back on that?
Cool.
I can get my technology to work. I do. Obviously, I think a lot of the objections formally raised were on behalf of the actual venues, and I think perhaps we need to be careful there how we deal with that. But in terms of the actual amenity of the occupiers, is it realistic in that particular location, given the proximity of the number of noise sources, particularly late at night, that any form of mitigation can actually deal with the sheer volume of, I mean, you're going to get people outside queuing, you've got taxis, you've got all sorts going on really from quite early in the morning to quite early the next morning. How can we be sure that we can actually protect residential amenity at that particular point, please?
If I can come in, Chair, is that okay?
Yeah.
As I said, there is one residential unit that's addressing High Street, and this has been considered as part of the environmental safety and health team's comments. The noise attenuation barrier at the front would be set back slightly from that frontage, so it's got an additional layer of protection, that it's not directly overlooking the High Street. It's actually set back from the sort of the main ground floor front elevation, so it would have that additional layer. The point is that that barrier would have to be of a sufficient standard that it can sufficiently act as a noise mitigation barrier, and that's why we've considered it appropriate to include a condition requiring those details. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Emily. Is that okay, Councillor Cowell?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Right, can I call on Councillor Sean Kesey to speak, please?
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Nice and clear.
Good, lovely. Question to our officers. Too many times, licensed venues, nightclubs, pubs, bars suffer at the hands of residential developments. I've seen it where residential developments have been built with good intentions, close to licensed venues, but then the noise complaints start coming in and the venues start to suffer. Now, these venues are places for people to socialise. It's where young people meet. I've been a bit patronising there, haven't I? It's where all people meet, should I stress. It's where people make and build relationships. Now, can you assure me that should this development go ahead, a year down the line, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, businesses near to it will in no way have their business affected in a negative way by any complaints that should come in, and it won't stop further development of licensed venues in the immediate area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Kesey. Emily, do you want to come back on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I don't know whether I can't see in the guest list whether our environmental safety and health team officers are here. They may want to come in at this point, so I'll let them come in if they want to. However, what I would say is that the specific MPPF policy that was referred to by the public speaker is paragraph 182. We are very well aware of that, and that was something that we discussed with the agents, in particular regard to the adjoining music venue and adjacent pubs and restaurants. And so we went through a number of noise surveys. It's worth pointing out that the sound barrier for the front unit addressing High Street is not the only form of mitigation that we are conditioning to be provided and have details of as part of this recommendation. Officers have also requested that a condition is included relating to the actual the form of windows that are included, but not only that, we are also asking for mechanical ventilation. Mechanical ventilation being included as part of the habitable accommodation means that if people need ventilation in their room, they are not forced to open windows, which means that the internal noise environment of those habitable rooms can stay below a certain sound level, and that's what that does. So we've got a two-pronged approach, really. We've got windows that secure it, and also ventilation that means that they don't have to open the windows if they do need to. So I hope that clarifies that position. And as I said, I'm not sure if our environmental safety and health team are here.
Tim's on.
Okay.
He's just put his hand up. Tim, do you want to add to that? Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Right, okay, thank you, Chair. Councillor Casey, thank you for your question. It is a challenging development. There's no two ways about that. High street developments always are when there's live entertainment in the vicinity, in the immediate vicinity with this. My officers, I know, have spent an awful lot of time with the noise consultants operating for the applicants to put a scheme in place that we feel is the best that we can achieve with this situation to allow this development to proceed. And they have made some significant changes to their initial proposal because of our intervention, specifically with noise in mind. We're very mindful that the development shouldn't have an adverse effect on existing activity in that location, such as the cock and bull and claptrap. And we feel the noise surveys were fair when they assessed the noise from those activities, and that the mitigation put into place should be sufficient to control noise from those activities and its effect on the residents, along with the other mitigation that Emily's just discussed in detail with the ventilation, the glazing, and the noise barriers in the conditions in the report. So from an environmental protection point of view, we think is the best we can achieve for that building, for this use in that location. I would say that we can't stop anyone complaining about noise in the future, and we'd have to assess a complaint if we received one. But we would hope that the measures in place would stop any serious detrimental effect to future residents. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Tim.
Are
you okay with that? Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Let me ask my question again, because I understand there's lots of mitigation. But my question wasn't, my question was not about shouldn't it affect. My question was, will it positively not affect the business models of the current licensed venues?
Tim, do you want to come back on that? Or?
I can share, yeah, thank you. Councillor Casey, as far as we're concerned at the moment, how the business is operating, this is taking into account their current operations. Of course, if they change their operations in any way, that may have an adverse effect on the future residents. If they want to develop how they're operating, we could get complaints about that maybe. And I think Kat, who spoke, mentioned emptying bottles between, I think, was it 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning? I would expect maybe a responsible operator to look at that and think, well, we won't do that anymore. We'll do that at a more sociable time because there are residents there now. So it may mean some small changes to help accommodate the residential development. But the measures we put in place we think are sufficient to stop any adverse effect on the operation of the businesses as they're operating today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Can I just come in, Chair, on that point regarding bottles? Obviously, this will be for Tim to comment upon in more detail, but I think it is worth pointing out that as part of the noise survey and the recommendations that were raised, the monitoring that was undertaken did happen on a couple of instances, and one of those instances, it picked up that there was the noise arising from bottles. So it's the recommendations that have been made have taken that into account. So it's something that has been picked up, and so I would hope that the ventilation and the mechanical ventilation that's been advised as part of those conditions takes that into account.
So I'll just ask once more then, just for clarity, if you don't mind, that the current licensed venue will not have to change any current business practices or their current business model. They will be allowed to continue unchanged, and that will be sacrosanct.
Tim?
I'm happy to come in here, Chair. Okay. On the basis of the evidence that we have been given and the noise surveys that have been provided and the advice that we have been given from Environmental Safety and Health Team, we are satisfied as officers, taking into account specific policies within the National Planning Policy Framework and also our own local policies, that the residential development and the mitigation that has been proposed as part of this will not have a detrimental impact upon the adjacent existing uses and their operation.
Thank you,
Chair.
Can I ask Councillor Ahmed to speak, please? Councillor Ahmed?
Okay.
Hi.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Just firstly, it was reassuring to hear what Emily and Tim just said, and mostly what Emily just said as well, because I'm coming in or looking at this application from a similar angle as Councillor Kesey. Now, the way I look at this is very similar to, I would describe it as very similar to situations where people move in to areas which are neighbouring schools. There's certain things which historically you're going to get where you get a school, you'll get that traffic, you'll get people parking in places where they shouldn't. And in those situations where people do move into those areas, they should know what could potentially have an effect on their amenity. Now, this is exactly the same as far as I can see. This it's a high street. It's been used in a certain manner. The noise currently there, the music is currently there. It's been there and it's established. So any future occupants of these properties or any other properties within that vicinity should be aware. And if I'm honest with you, it's a bit of a defence from the council's point of view, and even from the developer's point of view. Should anyone in the future make any complaints about noise and nuisance. So I'm not too worried in that case, as long as obviously I'm not saying that that gives license to the organisations or the businesses currently there to do absolutely what they want in terms of noise and nuisance, as long as the noise that is coming, which you will get, is reasonable given the nature of the works or the entertainment that's taking place in those buildings, then that's fine. Obviously, if the noise and the nuisance is over and above what would be expected of an organisation of that nature, then I imagine the complaints would be treated a lot more seriously than normal complaints for noise and nuisance. If you just look at it from a planning point of view, I can't see this. Well, the main issue I had was potentially the parking. Is that going to be an issue? But based on the information I can see in the report, we're ticking all the boxes. Noise nuisance, I'm not too worried. As mentioned, people are coming in, they know what to expect. And the council, hopefully, in those situations, will look at it from an angle, which is the noise was there before you. You made the decision to move in there, and now you've got to live with it. And that's all I've got to say, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Harley.
Button by mistake. Sorry.
Sorry. So, Councillor Burston, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. I'd agree with Councillor Ahmed there. It's a case of, you know, you move into an area like that, you understand that there's going to be a certain degree of noise in a town centre, and also looking at the design and the nature of the flats, 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom. I'm presuming that the owners are going to be marketing them to a younger clientele anyway. People who may well accept that, you know, living in a town centre, you know, you accept the noise in return for the amenity of having those kind of facilities on your doorstep. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burston. Would anybody else like to make a comment or ask a question before I ask you to vote on this? Oh, sorry, apologies, Councillor Jackie Howell.
Thanks, Chair. Just going back again to this sort of residential amenity and the potential conflict with the suggested use, well, with the use that pre-exists. I hear what people are saying. Yes, it is a high street, and yes, you're moving in next to a pub. But we all know the problems when people do that. I mean, given the location, and I know the area very well because I grew up in Stourbridge, I really am. I mean, this is going to be very full on. It's not just going to be a few hours occasionally. It's going to be very, very full on pretty much most of the time once we get through this coronavirus thing and things go back to normal. And I've got some real concerns about how we're actually going to go forward. I can see really significant conflicts and potential impacts on businesses, and some people who are really potentially not going to be all that happy. I'm really not sure that these two uses in that particular location are particularly sensible. I know that we've got other high street residences. We've got some in Lower High Street which work perfectly well. We've got some other areas not too far away, but I remain to be convinced that this is a good idea at this particular point. So although there's all this talk of noise attenuation, I can see real potential for conflict, and it does greatly concern me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowell. Councillor Taylor.
Right, I've got 2 points I'd like for someone to clarify. How long has this property been in the state it's in, empty? And surely it seems that there's more and more of these buildings being made into residential developments. And if we've learned nothing, we should be more aware of the noise impact than ever before. And it always comes back to bite us. So, you know, we really do need to address that we have covered as much as possible, because nobody knows what's going to happen, that we have addressed this noise barrier, because as I've said, it will come back to bite us, won't it?
Emily?
Thank you, Chair. It's been vacant for a number of years now. I can't tell you how many exactly, but I know it's at least 2.5. But I'll try and check quickly and see if I can confirm that, if that's okay.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, Councillor Hanif.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a comment.
Can't hear you,
Councillor Hanif, we can't hear you.
You can't hear me.
You can now.
Is that better? Okay. Just a comment, really, Chair. Just to say that I live in Stourbridge and I'm very familiar with this site. Just as much as I'm against boarded up shop fronts like that, but I think looking at the actual area, there are lots of other residential local places, i.e. the old Stourbridge News place being done and 1 or 2 others. I feel that there's far too many sort of pubs and clubs, venues there, and we are leading ourselves into a problematic area. I think, because I think residential complaints will really increase. People will take these residential places, but even knowing that there will be problems, but we'll just hit a bit of terrible complaints later on. So I don't think it's a good idea. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hanif. Is everybody ready to vote on this? Councillor Taylor, everybody ready to vote? So we'll go to the vote. Okay, so again, we're going to use the chat platform. If you are for the recommendation to approve the application, then please put for. Against, obviously, if you're against, and abstain if you don't wish to make a vote. Councillor Cowler, is that against or for?
Was against, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair.
Yeah, so it's
Chair,
for.
it's Steve from Democratic Services. I think it's probably easier if we just ask each member to say their vote, just for clarity, make sure. So Councillor Ahmed, Asif Ahmed.
Councillor Ahmed.
I'm for the recommendation.
For the recommendation. Bradley.
Okay. Councillor Bradley.
Councillor Bradley.
Are you for or against?
I'm against, Chair.
Okay.
Against.
Councillor Cowell.
Councillor Kell.
Against.
Against.
Councillor Burston.
For.
Councillor Taylor. Councillor Taylor.
Sorry, for.
Councillor Hanif.
I'm against, Chair.
Councillor Kesey.
Against, Chair.
No. Councillor Harley.
For.
And that just leaves me, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's 4-4, Chair.
And then 4.
Against.
4 for me.
4.
Yeah.
That's approved then, Chair.
Okay, the application has been approved. So moving on to the next application, which is planning application P200339. Is it Emily or Pete or Helen that's coming in with this one?
It's Pete.
Pete, sorry, Pete.
All right.
Over to you.
Okay. Thank you. Steve, could I have the presentation on, please? Okay. Right, and
You click on the mouse, it should move it.
Okay. Hey. Okay. Thanks, Steve. Right, Chair, this application relates to the northern area of a development site, which has granted outline planning permission for a mixed-use development under application P171767 for residential and employment, with the larger residential sections to the south having been significantly developed over the last few years. You can see the application site on the current screen, indicated within the red line boundary, and this fronts onto Cakemore Road. There's a significant amount of industrial premises on the opposite side of Cakemore Road, and they're located in Sandwell Borough Council. There's also currently a planning application for means of access to the site vested with Sandwell Borough Council, as the access is from their highway. Okay. The current application represents the reserve matters approval for employment use and consists of a linear block of 10 units of warehouse, light industrial or general industrial uses. An additional single unit is proposed to the west due to the location of a sewer that severs the site. So this indicates the site that was shown within the outline application. Clearly, the current plan reflects that approved at the outline stage. The plan in front of you shows the linear arrangement of the 10 proposed employment uses and the separated individual units to the end of the site. All of the units are 9.8 meters tall and will be accessed from Cakemore Road in the locations that you can see on screen at the moment. The proposed development is therefore acceptable in principle and serves the purpose of protecting houses on the Fairfields development to the south from noise generated from industrial premises to the north of Cakemore Road in Sandwell. That element of the commercial unit screening the residential was an integral part of consideration of the outline application. So the units are of the scale of a traditional dwelling, and being to the north of residential premises on the Fairfields estate will have no adverse impacts upon outlook or daylighting. No notified residents facing the site from the Fairfields development have objected on this basis. In terms of the design, the industrial units are of modern appearance, with grey and dark grey cladding with red accents, which will form a composite of the construction and is considered to be appropriate for the context of the development, with many industrial styles being located on both sides of the highway. Revised plans indicated on pre-committee notes show brick entrance features to the site introduced as a result of discussions with the applicant. However, the applicant is not prepared to introduce brick construction to the industrial units themselves, as the design reflects their corporate appearance template, and there would be an excessive cost and time of construction for brick or part brick built industrial units. So this slide gives an indication of the general appearance of the units fronting Cakemore Road. This is an indication of the linear block. This is a view of Cakemore Road, showing the application frontage, and a view from the goals centre further along Cakemore Road. This is looking west. Industrial unit on the right hand side is in Sandwell and is of clad appearance. This is a view from within Fairfield's developments at the western end, showing how the view from residential properties to the industrial site will be evidence. Again, looking from within the Fairfields development towards the industrial site, looking north. Just in terms of the application for the variation of conditions on the outline approval, the application is considered to be acceptable on the basis that the submission of details of measures to control dust, grit and fume will still be required, but they'll be required before occupation as opposed to before construction. This will enable a more focused means of protection for the occupier, as the occupier will be known at that point and appropriate mitigation can be installed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pete. Can I call on Parmjit Sahota to speak, please? You're still on mute.
Hear me now, Chair?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Thank you. When you're ready.
I just want to, okay, there's two applications. I'm just trying to clarify, is this for the actual, because there's two similar numbers, so I can make my comments on this application, I
We're
presume.
speaking on the first application of the two.
Okay. Okay, I just want to clarify a few things there, which I think have been a bit misleading from what the planning officer stated. Now, this, I just want to clarify, Cakemore Road is a key artery road that links Sandwell and Hellzone neighbourhoods. It's not an industrial estate like Pensnet. So I think that's a key thing they need to note here.
Sorry.
And if you look at the map I'm showing here, as I think which Peter showed, the state actually is divided by residential areas, and that's fundamental. The point I'm going to make later on. The Cakemore Road links the A4123 to the A458 and A456, and it's surrounded by residential housing. So this Cakemore Road industrial estate is an enclave within a residential area. And the point I'm trying to make here is I've got two concerns regards the design of what's proposed and also the consultation. Now, if I go in terms to the design, what's been proposed clearly is sheds really with windows and shutters. Now, I feel as a local resident and a councillor that this is inappropriate for this location, which is in a sense a transfer road into Hellzone and Dudley Borough from Sandwell. This Cakemore Road is not a service road in the middle of an industrial estate. And also, I think the picture that Peter stated was actually misleading. The three businesses that are located opposite this industrial estate, what's proposed, are all of brick built, as this picture show. The picture which Peter showed was where it's a steel warehouse, which is further down. That is not opposite this industrial estate. As you can see from these pictures, the existing businesses opposite the new proposed industry are all brick built, and that's my concern. That we need a high. These warehouses need to be of brick built frontages, so they look nice as you drive towards Hellzone from Langley. You're not looking at big sheds with windows and shutters. On Dudley side and on the Sandwell side, you got brick faced buildings which are right opposite this place. And the other thing I like to sort of just make a point here is I've read the design and access statement from the developers, and on page 4 they clearly state that they offer box clever solutions, right? Which we're getting a shed in a sense with some windows and shutters. On page 19, they clearly state that this will integrate within the existing Cape Moor Road, and we offer a significant, attractive, well-developed, detailed design. Now, looking at the designs that you've been seeing, I would not say they are attractive, well-designed signs. They are sheds, large sheds with windows, shutters. Now, that's my big concern, you know, for this location. Now, I don't think this is appropriate for this location. This obviously, this clearly states these are the three buildings opposite what's proposed, and they are all brick built. The picture that Peter showed was the steel warehouse, which is further down. So that's my concern reference this site. And my other key concern is about the consultation. Now, it's been given to me that all the neighbours were consulted about this design. All the residents on Fairfield Road, and also the businesses on the Dudley side in Helzowen. The three businesses that actually sit opposite this development were not consulted by a letter, purely because they're in Sandwell. And I think that's a big flaw we've done as a local council. These three individual businesses should have had letters on what's proposed opposite them, rather than just sticking a little note on a lamppost on Cape Moor Road. They are more closer to this industrial estate than the other people that have been consulted. So
Excuse
they
me,
should have
Chair.
had some letters.
3 minutes is up, sorry.
Did you hear me?
Sorry, Chair.
Yeah, the 3 minutes is up, thank you.
Okay, so I think that's the fundamental point there.
All right,
that,
thank you.
They're not fit for purpose for this key
Okay,
location.
sorry, the 3 minutes is up.
Okay, thank you.
Can I now call on Matteo Espinosa, please?
There, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Hi, Chairman. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for enabling me to speak on behalf of the applicant Warm Flame Development in support of this application. Members will note from your officer's report that the primary aim of this submission is to alter the terms of Condition 21 relating to measures to control grit, dust and fume from proposed employment development. We would wish to clarify that this proposal merely seeks to alter the timing of the submission of these control measures relating to arrangements for air extraction. At present, the future occupiers of each unit is not yet known, and the variation of the condition will allow for specific measures to be identified and provided once a future occupier is known and submitted for your officer's approval before occupation of the employment units. We can reassure members that as your officer's report and environmental health officers confirm, this proposal is in no way an attempt to remove the condition/obligation, but actually ensures that it responds to the individual users and that mitigation is appropriate and the best option available to protect the amenity of neighbours once future occupiers are established. This is the most practical and sensible approach, and we trust you can support this application today and allow the variation in accordance with your officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Pete, would you like to come back on any of those, please?
In terms of a few issues raised, if members do want to see a video, we do have a video of the Cape Moor Road locality that can show more varied industrial units on the opposite side of the road in Sandwell.
Yeah.
In terms of, I suppose, notification and consultation in respect of the Reserve Matters application, well, both applications, I can confirm that they were in accordance with our statutory requirements in the General Development Management Order. Also, in terms of the fact that premises in Sandwell weren't notified, what I would say is that the application for the means of access to the development is a planning application with Sandwell Borough Council. Sandwell will have notified their premises about the application, and we've actually specifically notified Sandwell Council about the planning applications that have been submitted within Dudley as well. So we've had no adverse comments from Sandwell on that basis.
Thank you, Pete.
Sorry, am I able to speak regarding the second
Sorry,
application?
No, sorry, you've already had your 3 minutes. Apologies. It was stated at the beginning.
Okay. Did members want to see a video of the locality? If there's any queries about the range of industrial units within the area?
You can show it if you want, Pete.
Okay.
I think that would be helpful.
Okay,
I also think it would be helpful, especially as it's been raised about the materials used for the construction by a one of the letters received from one of the neighbours.
That won't be on.
Okay. Well, you just let them run. Go through each one individually. Yeah. Okay. So this is showing the corner of the site with the houses beyond on the Fairfields developments. It's panning round. There are, I think, 4 videos that will pick up the units opposite. In the background, you could just see a clad unit on the Sandwell side of Cape Moor Road. This is showing the Cape Moor Road frontage. You can see a variety of industrial buildings on the Sandwell side. One with a part brick fascia, another one fully clad, and units towards the rear fully clad. This is the Goals Centre, units clad on the Dudley side of the borough, looking down Cape Moor Road, coming up with Sandwell units on the right-hand side. And a final view from the Fairfields estate to the industrial units on the opposite side of Cape Moor Road. You can see plumbing unit with half-clad, half brick, some older part-clad, part brick units, and fully clad units on the Sandwell side. Okay, thank you, Steve. I think those videos hopefully demonstrate the range of industrial units on the Sandwell side, and so I can only commend the images of the proposed development that you've seen as being appropriate to the context. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pete. So then, Councillor Ahmed.
Hi, Chair, can you hear me?
Yeah, Pete, can you just stop sharing, please?
I don't think I am sharing.
I've got your screen on mine.
Ah.
Steve sharing.
That's it, right. Thank you.
Perfect. Sorry, for some reason my camera's gone off, but if you can all hear me, that's I guess that's the main thing.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Well, firstly, thank you for the pictures. As far as I can see, as the speaker mentioned, the whole purpose of this particular part of the application is just to look at the timing in which that condition needs to be complied with. So as far as I'm concerned, they're not requesting the condition to be removed altogether. They're just changing the timing in which they need to comply with it. I think it's a reasonable request. Can't see anything within the report to suggest for many of our officers, mainly the environmental safety and health officers, that that's an issue. So on that basis, I don't think there's very much more for me to say. I'm happy to really go to the vote on this one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Taylor.
Just to support what Councillor Ahmed has just said, we're not looking at the actual type of materials or who's going to be on the site. It is just a matter of timing at this point. Is that right?
Yeah. So is everybody happy to go to the vote? Okay, so
Chair, could I just check, because it was clarified earlier that we were just looking at we are definitely just looking at the first application. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, so I'll go to Councillor Ahmed.
Sorry, are we voting now, Chair? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I'm in favour of the recommendation.
So cool, yeah. Councillor Bradley. Councillor Bradley. Come in.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My mic has come on. Yes, I'm for it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Burston.
I'm in favour of it. We'll have to have cards with for or against that we can twist, don't we?
Oh, yeah. Councillor Cowell.
4, Chair.
Councillor Kesey.
4.
Councillor Taylor.
4.
Councillor Harley.
4.
Councillor Hanif.
4, Chair.
Am I missing anyone?
No, Chair, I think that's a unanimous approval.
It is.
Just you, Chair.
Yes, 4. So that application has been approved. So we'll move on to the second part of that, of the same land of the application, and that is plan application P200348, and that's pages 135 to 150. Back over to you, please, Pete.
Okay, Chair. Well, I mean, essentially, the presentation was the same for both applications. So I think, having seen the videos and the context of the site, I would commend members to consider the application.
Okay. Oh, do we have the same speakers again for this?
Yes, we do, Chair.
Apologies for that. So sorry, I'll call Councillor Parmjit Sahota to speak. Apologies for that one. When you're ready.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to, obviously I'm new to this sort of Teams committee. I think I've got my submissions the wrong way round, so my apologies. I think obviously when Peter did his presentation, I assumed that it was for. So in a sense, it's very much what I've said previously. Obviously, in terms of, although I welcome this investment into Cape Moor Road, my concerns basically are the design of what's been proposed. And I think as councillors or residents, I think we owe it for a key entry into Dudley that we have good quality design industrial buildings on our side of the board. And I think the presentation by Pete wasn't misleading. He did at no time use his video to focus on the 3 businesses that are actually opposite this development, which are all brick built. So my concern again is that that we need to have good design buildings for this, and what's proposed is basically just sheds with windows. Now, if we're quite happy to accept that on our side in a key gateway to the borough, then obviously that's down to the committee to decide. But I feel they need to raise the game to design these buildings so they do blend in with the existing brickwork feature. And this is, like I said, a key artery route into Dudley. It's not a service road in the middle of Pensnet trading estate where you can put these big sheds with windows and shutters. We want, when people drive through this area, we want to say, wow, that looks nice. Now, are we saying that what they're proposing does look nice, considering this is residential area surrounding this area, this site? So that is my concern here, really. And I think, you know, and you know, obviously it's down to the committee whether we feel we're going to accept this sort of low-level design for this artery route into Dudley. You know, this is not appropriate for this key road into Dudley and Halzoe. And that's my concern. And that's why I'm appealing to the committee to say, look, you know, this is not suitable for this key road into Halzoe North and into Dudley, what's proposed, considering what's opposite that estate. It is brick built. And that's my concern, really, as a local resident and councillor. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, can I call Matteo Espinosa again, please?
Hi there, Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you again for enabling me to speak on behalf of the applicant, Warm Flame Development, in support of this application. The principle of development has already been established within the outline planning consent that granted permission for a mixed-use development of residential dwellings and employment within use classes B1A, C, B2 and B8. The primary consideration of this submission relates to the design, scale, access, appearance and layout of the scheme. The scale of the proposed buildings is of a similar scale to the existing industrial/commercial buildings and integrates well within the local context. A contemporary approach is taken in the design that is appropriate to the use of the buildings which complement the characteristics of the local area. We've also taken on board those comments by local ward members, especially in relation to design matters, and have incorporated additional brick pillars to entrances to shore up the design along the Cape Moor Road frontage. Significant landscaping and planting proposals are provided within the scheme, and provision of cycle parking and storage will allow future occupiers and employees to choose to make journeys by bike. The proposals follow the outline permission parameters and plans by screening existing residents within the Fairfields development towards the south. We recognise comments by ward members in relation to provision of retail units such as a coffee shop, convenience store. However, the application must conform to the outline permission granted for the site, and there is no ability as part of this application to proceed with retail proposals under this submission. However, we would be happy to engage with members on this suggestion in the future. We're already getting strong levels of interest in the site from occupiers in various sectors. The submission has covered other technical matters such as impact from noise, nature conservation and enhancement, dust, site remediation and drainage details, and satisfies the requirements of the conditions imposed on the outline permission. The proposals will result in a positive effect on the local population, providing flexible size units for potential tenants and much needed employment opportunities both during construction and when in use. The proposals deliver high quality, policy compliant and sustainable employment development, which brings over 5,200 square metres of employment floor space to the local area on a currently derelict site. These proposals are critical for economic development of the area, which is of heightened importance given the current circumstances and likely upcoming economic difficulties we face. The proposals fulfil the purposes of the National Local Planning Policy Framework, bringing much needed investment to this regeneration corridor in Rowley Regis. It will greatly benefit the locality economically, socially and environmentally. We therefore respectfully request that members support their officer's recommendation and approve this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Pete, do you want to come back in on anything, or do you want me to pass it straight to committee?
I think if members still recall the images of the units that were shown in the presentation, I'm happy for them to consider the application now.
Okay, so members, any comments or questions? We all happy to go straight to the vote? Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. As far as I can see, it's just that no one at any point has said. I know it's there's already a previous application been granted for the nature of the employment use, but no one's really said anything about they've got any real issues apart from how it appears. So it's all down to each particular individual as to whether or not they think that if the building goes up, would it look nice? I think that's a very difficult situation to be in because not everybody has the same opinion. So if I base it solely on planning grounds and what I can see in front of me, I can't see any issues as long as the materials that are being used are safe, fit for purpose. You know, whether it looks good, whether it looks bad, it's completely up to every individual, and we you know, not everybody likes the same thing. So I don't think we a lot of what I've heard today in terms of the objections really put me off supporting this application, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or no? We'll go to the vote. So Councillor Ahmed, you're for, did you say?
Chair, yeah. For the
Councillor
application,
Bradley.
yes.
Okay.
For, Chair.
Councillor Burston.
For.
Councillor Cowell.
For.
Councillor Hanif.
It's 4 for me as well, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Harley.
For.
Councillor Kesey.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, it's 4 for me, yes, as well.
And it's a 4 for me. So that application has been approved. So moving on to the next application, which is P191352. I'm going to put this straight over to the committee unless there's any officers that want to add any more to this.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to add some points for the purposes of being minuted. Since the publication of the pre-committee notes, further
Sorry.
Am I okay to carry on, Chair?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. For the purposes of being minuted, since the publication of the pre-committee notes, further discussion has been had with the Council's Environmental Safety and Health team, following a request from the applicants to consider an earlier opening time of 7 AM on Sundays. Given that other convenience store establishments in similar settings across the borough have 7 AM Sunday and public holidays opening, the Head of Environmental Health and Trading Standards would not be able to sustain an objection to 7 AM Sunday public holiday opening as requested. However, officers want to confirm that this only applies to public opening. Commencement of deliveries on Sundays is being retained at 10 AM on Sundays and public holidays, apart from newspaper and magazine deliveries. The delivery times are confirmed by condition and a delivery car parking management plan. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Emily. Right, committee, do we have any comments or questions? No? Are we all happy to go to the vote? Councillor Taylor?
Sorry, yeah, can we clarify, because I've had one of these applications in my ward, and the biggest problem was proving or asking our highways the road into this site with such big delivery vehicles is this substantive enough to take all of that? If there's cars parked where I can see where the cars will be parked, and a lorry pulls in, is it going to block that, and then there won't be any in and out afterwards? I can't see where it's written in. If there's delivery times or can be any time, then surely if a delivery van pulls in and the cars are stuck there, you know, is the turn point big enough to accommodate that? That's what I'm asking.
Through you, Chair, it's John Hindley, the Highways Officer.
Yes, John.
Yes, we've worked with the applicant to ensure that the vehicle will be able to exit the highway, come onto the car parking area, then with the use of a banksman, whether that be a member of the delivery team or a shops person, they will swing round to the rear of the shop and then reverse backwards and pull forward onto the hatched delivery area. So it's intended that the disruption to general access will be literally that small time it takes to pull forward, reverse back, and then pull into the delivery area. Once the vehicle is in there, then they will be able to load and unload without affecting two-way flow and access to the store. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine. As long as it's safe for that to happen. Don't forget, you've got people walking across this at all times, and that's got to be the main issue there. That is safe for pedestrians as well as the traffic to flow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brilliant. Are there any more questions? So we're all happy to go for the vote. Okay, so Councillor Ahmed.
I'm for, Chair.
For. Councillor Bradley.
I'm for, Chair.
Councillor Burston.
I'm for.
Councillor Cowell.
For, Chair.
Councillor Hanif.
For, Chair.
Councillor Harley.
For.
Councillor Kesey.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
For.
Myself for. That's unanimous. The application has been approved. Now moving on to planning application number P190611.
Okay, Chair, this is mine.
Apologies, you've already done the report. So do you want to add any more to that, Pete, or?
I would just add that there is a pre-committee note that just refers to revised conditions because additional information has been submitted in terms of a plan for the traffic regulation and weight restrictions, and that therefore translates into the plans condition at number 1. Do you wish me to do a presentation? Or are you happy?
Report, isn't it?
Okay. Thank you.
Members, any questions or queries? No, we all happy to go to the vote? Tim.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, can I just clarify, this is plan application 19/0611 Bean Road. Yeah, it is okay. Yeah, Chair and Committee, I just wanted to make a couple of points about the acoustic barrier provision, specifically on the northern boundary of the site. The development abuts existing industry, specifically a company called Biffa. I'm sure you're all familiar with Biffa, the skip, the waste management company, and that there is a proposal for a barrier on that northern boundary. In fact, there's a 4-metre high barrier at one place. Now, unfortunately, I'm sorry, I haven't got the location plan in front of me to specifically reference it. However, if I just talk from my notes, on the northern boundary in one place between plots 252 and 267, these are 2.5-storey houses, or they appear to be. So the roof space has been converted, or will be converted, into living accommodation or sleeping accommodation. Where the 4-metre barrier is, we feel that the 4-metre barrier probably isn't high enough. That there will still be a line of sight from the plus half a storey over the barrier to the noise at Biffa. And if I say what happens at Biffa, they don't actually do any processing there, but all the vehicles leave the Biffa unit between 2 and 4 a.m. Test their vehicles on the open forecourt, the brakes, etc., the hydraulics, and then leave the site to go and do their waste collections wherever. And that's obviously very unsociable hours, where people would normally be expected to sleep. That on that location plan, the site plan, sorry, you can see the dotted line, which is the acoustic barrier, and you can also see that there's a little further up from that location. There's actually no noise barrier at all between plots 308 and 318. And then there's a 2-metre barrier between plots 374 and 400. But there are some significant gaps in that barrier, which will render the barrier relatively ineffective. So we've got some specific concerns about the proposal as it stands. In the report, condition 18, there is a requirement for a detailed noise mitigation scheme to be provided and approved by the local planning authority. My point really today is that my service area, environmental safety and health, don't feel that the details that are shown on the site plan are adequate to provide the protection that we would expect to future residents because of those 3 issues I've mentioned. But there is the condition 18, which allows, I'm assuming that we can continue with further negotiations should this application be approved tonight. That condition 19 also has some specific protection built into it, which is the internal layout of the habitable accommodation, so that the habitable rooms are further away from the noise source. Also acoustic glazing and ventilation provisions, which will again very much help to protect the future residents. Our real concern is that people could still open windows at between 2 and 4 o'clock, where the acoustic barrier isn't quite sufficient, perhaps, that there could be disturbance and complaints against Biffa, which we'd have to investigate and potentially ask Biffa to change their operation. So what I would ask is that should members decide to approve this application tonight, that the detail on the plan that's shown in the report, that shows the detail of the acoustic barriers, isn't part of that approval, that we got delegated authority to undertake further negotiation with the applicants to put forward a scheme that we feel is appropriate for that boundary, and that will protect future residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tim. Councillor Taylor.
Right, I've got 2 points that I want to make, and they both relate to traffic. They both relate to, this is a big development. You're talking 472 homes here. From what I can see on the actual plans, there are 3 main entrances from this site onto main roads. 1 right at the rear and 2 at the front. Now, this is the Birmingham New Road is a nightmare at any time of the day. How are we? First of all, one of my points is that this site could become a rat run for the people that live on there. If looking at it, people are coming from the back way to cut out all the other roads, cut through the estate to come out onto the Birmingham New Road, or vice versa. So have we got anything in place there to actually stop that? And to ease the traffic flow as a whole.
Okay, shall I come back on that, Chair?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, the outline planning approval put in place requirements for signal junction improvements to Birmingham New Road before occupation of any of the phases of residential development, and the means of access was considered at the outline stage. So this reserve matters application specifically is looking at matters of the layout, appearance, landscaping, and another appearance of the development. In terms of coming up with this layout, there were revisions throughout the application that did change the kind of highway layout. And from Sedgley Road onto Bean Road, it's done as a somewhat circuitous route. It's not a direct route, and it's not, I guess, easily identifiable as a rat run. The last condition on the planning approval requires that there is a 7.5 ton weight limit imposed upon any roads linking Sedgley Road West and Bean Road, and there's also traffic regulation orders proposed within the first sections of those roads to prevent parking. So in terms of rat running, yeah, the layout of the linking roads hopefully is circuitous enough to put people off using that as a rat run. And the junction improvements to Birmingham New Road should actually bring improvements to the situation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pete. Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to know, following on from what Tim said, really, does Pete or anybody else have any issues with maybe going ahead with what Pete suggested, giving us or the council the opportunity to negotiate anything further should we need to?
In terms of the layouts, Councillor, we've progressed significantly. We've got a housing allocation and a major housing allocation on this site. Part of the issues that have arisen is because this is only half of what was the outline site area given over for residential development. The industrial premises to the north have actually been purchased by a new operator and developer, and they are operating those industrial premises as a going concern. Now, whilst we actually need to accommodate issues in relation to noise that are identified within the report, we also do need to deliver on this housing allocation. We've dropped from 500 down to 472 from when the application was first submitted, and there is no doubt that this is an on balance in terms of the relationship of the houses to industry. But we think, in accordance with the noise assessments that have been submitted, 3 noise assessments have been submitted by the applicants during the course of this application, that with conditions 18 and 19 that clearly give a requirement for them to submit information in terms of barriers, bunds, mitigation, ventilation of houses, full house ventilation. That should, well, we think that has addressed the noise issues and will enable this development to go ahead and deliver much needed housing. There are elements of compromise in the conditions and I guess in how some of the properties may be impacted, but we think it's enough to give a reasonable noise climate and living situation for new residents, such that it shouldn't affect the operation of the industry to the north adversely. And I'll just make a point that we've not received any objection on the final revised layout from IFA, although they commented upon the first, and we've received no comments from the operators of the industrial estate to the north as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pete. Are you happy with that, Councillor Ahmed?
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to know his comments because obviously he's had a bit more, probably more dealings with the developers than probably. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Pete.
Anybody else wish to make a comment?
Yes, please, Chair.
Who's that?
Councillor Kesey.
Apologies, Councillor Kesey.
Yeah, it's just a comment that I would like noted because alarm bells are ringing. If you think back to the application we looked back at a couple of minutes ago in Stourbridge, I was assured that the businesses in Stourbridge High Street wouldn't be affected by the development. And yet the first thing I've heard on this application is that, oh, we may have to ask BIFA to amend their business practice if there aren't any mitigations to prevent noise. Now, you know, as I say, I just want it noted that businesses should not be affected by residential developments. And that needs to be clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kesey. So if everybody's okay, are we all right to go to the vote? Councillor Ahmed.
I'm for, Chair.
Councillor Bradley.
Yes, for, Chair, subject to the conditions. Thank you.
Apologies. Yeah, that's subject to conditions of delegated authority for the conditions of the boundaries. No, of the what was it? Apologies. What was it that Tim had?
For you, Chair, the conditions are actually at 18 and 19. That they're clear and they will be imposed as indicated if you just vote for in favour of the development. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Sorry. So Councillor, where were we? Councillor Burston?
Yep, I'm for.
Councillor Cowell?
For, Chair.
Councillor Hanif?
For Chair, subject to conditions.
Councillor Harley?
For.
Councillor Kesey?
For.
Councillor Taylor?
For.
And myself for. So that's again unanimous. So that application has been approved. So moving on to the next planning application, which is P200001. Does the officer want to add any more to the report, or are you happy for me to pass it straight to committee?
Just to refer to the pre-committee notes, Chair, there are additional or revised conditions as a result of, I suppose, tweaking of plans. It confirms that the Head of Environmental Health and Trading Standards has no objection to the development following additional monitoring by his officers. So I think I'll just commend the application to you in terms of the report and the pre-committee notes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pete. Members, any questions? Everybody happy to Councillor Taylor?
I'd just like to say that I welcome this application. It's in my ward. I've spoken at large to residents about this. I just want to clear one thing though first. The actual access from this site, although it's not an over big site, it's big enough. There are going to be 2 access points, one in Cochrane Road and one in Vine Street. Am I right in that? Can our planners? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's correct. Yeah,
That's
Vine
fine,
Street and
because
Cochrane Road. Yeah.
looking at it on this map, you've got it because there's another application coming through. I understand that, and I'm just wondering. I'm just hoping that this is in conjunction with the other application, that's not going to be blocked off and not made as a way in and a way out of this site. But that's right, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It is a road, yeah. The one in Vine Street.
Yeah, if that comes through as a separate development, it will use Vine Street as its means of access. It's a block within the corners of Vine Street. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions, or are we happy to go to the vote? Yep. So Councillor Ahmed.
For Chair.
Councillor Bradley.
For Chair, thank you.
Councillor Burston.
For.
Councillor Cowell.
For Chair.
Councillor Hanif.
For Chair.
Councillor Harley.
For.
Councillor Kesey.
For Chair.
Councillor Taylor.
For, please.
And myself for. Again, that's unanimous. That application has been approved. So moving on to the last application of the evening, planning application number P200275. Is there anything else that the officers would like to add to the report before I give it to passed over to the committee?
Good evening, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Just to again draw members' attention to the pre-committee notes, which refers to a condition related to an extension of the acoustic fencing a little bit further than what was originally proposed to ensure there is no issues at the latter part of the day towards 9 o'clock when this facility would be used in terms of noise and environmental safety and health are now comfortable with this application as it stands. Nothing further to add from me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Members of the committee. No questions? Councillor Cowell.
Thanks, Chair. I think it was mentioned in the highways report there was some concern around the glare from the floodlighting. Is that going to be resolved as part of the conditions, specifically on highways? I know that they've dealt with the issue around glare to the properties, but as the highways concerned, in terms of passing traffic being resolved?
Through you, Chair, yes, there's a condition that's been attached to ensure light glare in any capacity will be covered. And this, when the details come into us, will be discharged through the lighting engineer, who will look at it in regard to both glare to the neighbouring houses and in relation to the highway. So it will be covered by the condition that is proposed should any approval be granted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
Any more comments or questions? No. So moving to the vote. Councillor Ahmed.
For Chair.
Councillor Bradley. Councillor Bradley.
For Chair, thank you.
Councillor Burston.
For.
Councillor Cowell.
For Chair.
Councillor Hanif.
For Chair.
Councillor Harley.
For.
Councillor Kesey.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
For.
And myself is for. Again, that's unanimous. That application has been approved. And moving on to the next part of the agenda, are there any questions that have been given to the chair with 2 days prior notice?
None, Chair.
No. Well, that ends our first online meeting. Well done, guys.
Yes, thank you to the officers who put it all together. Very, very professionally done.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks,
you.
Steve.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thanks all.
Yes, bye-bye.
Right.
Yes. Go and jump
Enjoy the
up
rest
in the
of
hot
your
tub
week,
now, I
guys.
think. Yeah.
Good night, all.
Right. Right, bye, guys.
Bye.
See ya.
Cheers.
Bye.
Oh no, how do you stop it recording?
Oh, have you come off it?
I don't know.
Is Pete still on? No, he's gone in there.
Do you want a word with him? He's just by me.
That's right. Just tell him to train his facial expressions.
Okay.
See you all.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Manjit, are you still there?
I'm still there. I'm trying to see. I'm watching you. You're still recording.
I know. I need to find out how to stop recording. If I click on the button that says start recording, it doesn't do anything. Teams. Hang on, there's the 3 dots there. No, it's not that. Stop recording.
Oh,
There we
there
go.
is. Yeah, there is. Stop recording. That's it.